So the whole thing kicks off with Mary Shelley. Yes, that Mary Shelley, speaking from beyond the grave. She says she had an even better story than Frankenstein brewing in her head, but brain cancer took her before she could write it down. She's been carrying this story for centuries, desperate to get it out. And then she spots her opening, a woman named Ada. Something inside Ada is cracking, and through that crack, Mary slips right in. She's going to possess her to finally tell her story. Ada is in Chicago, basically being pushed around by every man in the room. She eats oysters, immediately throws them up because she can't stand them, and then suddenly snaps into this wild trance. Just starts raving, throwing out words like cunning and fraud, screaming out people's deepest secrets. She has absolutely no idea what's happening to her. There's a gang leader in the room named Lupino, and Ada, still in her trance, calls him out as the real monster and warns every woman in the room to watch what they say around him. Two of his guys, Clyde and James, pull her aside and tell her she's digging her own grave talking like that. James slaps her, trying to snap her out of it, but her mouth just won't stop. Clyde stops James from hitting her again. Then Ada says the name Frankenstein. That's Mary talking through her. Ada, terrified, asks what's happening and who's there. Mary warns her that a second part is coming. And right at that moment, Ada trips and falls down a flight of stairs. She dies instantly. Then the story shifts over to Frankenstein's monster, who now goes by Frankenstein himself. He shows up to meet a doctor named Euphronius. A woman at the door asks for his credentials, and he learns that Frankenstein was apparently resurrected back in 1819, and now it's 1936. The woman asks him to remove his cravat, takes one look at his face, and she knows exactly who he is. She's Dr. Euphronius herself, a well-known author and scientist who's been doing resurrection experiments on rats, moles, and cats. She's overjoyed. She invites him to stay at her institute permanently so she can study him. But Frank didn't come for that. He came because he's lonely. He wants a bride. The doctor asks how on earth she's supposed to help with that. Frank wants her to resurrect a woman from a dead body. She tells him there are easier ways to find companionship, but Frank says this isn't just about companionship. It's about the agony of loneliness. She tells him to stay at the institute for now. Frank, it turns out, is obsessed with a film actor named Ronnie. He's memorized every single line from his movies, and when he watches Ronnie dancing on screen, he pictures himself right there dancing beside him. The doctor thinks this whole bride idea is ridiculous. She finds the whole concept of stitching together a person from different corpses disgusting, even if they had one complete body. And she mocks him for having the nerve to also request that the woman have red hair and a cheerful personality. She jokes that maybe she should just make herself a handsome husband while she's at it. Frank loses it and shouts that this is an emergency. He's been alone for so long that when the doctor shook his hand the day before, it was the first human touch he'd felt in ages. He starts begging her. She's scared. Scientifically, ethically, 1,000 things could go catastrophically wrong. Then Frank asks her, completely deadpan, "Aren't you supposed to be a mad doctor?" And they both burst out laughing. So they go dig up a grave. They pull out a body and bring it back. Frank looks at the woman and says she's too beautiful. It would almost be a shame to disturb her. Right then, the doctor's nurse knocks on the door asking if everything's all right. The doctor sends her away, then tells Frank it's now or never. She can't just leave a dead body sitting in her office. They start the procedure. Frank's nerves are completely shot halfway through. The doctor tells him to breathe. They fire up all the machines, channel the energy, and Ada comes back to life. The doctor introduces her as his bride, but Ada immediately starts coughing up blood and shouting random things. She wants to go home. The doctor asks where she lives, but Ada's memory is gone, and on top of everything, her leg is broken. She tells Frank to keep his hands off her. The doctor examines her leg. Ada can't remember a single detail about her life. Frank tells her it looks like she was in an accident, and the doctor tells her to just rest. Frank is staring at her like he's won the lottery. Ada looks at the doctor and asks, what is wrong with him? Then Ada asks if bride means she's already married. The doctor says it means she's going to be married. Ada says she doesn't remember Frank at all. The doctor tells her, with a straight face, that he's not that much of a monster. Then suddenly, Ada is pulled somewhere else entirely. She's with Mary. Mary tells her she is her monster. Ada is floating in the doctor's lab. She asks Mary for her name. Mary tells her that's exactly what they need to figure out. Then, Ada snaps back to reality. Frank is asleep on the floor right next to her. He'd bumped into her by mistake. He apologizes and, trying to be charming like in the movies, presents her with an umbrella to lean on while walking. He reaches toward her face, and Ada tells him to calm down a little. Then she slips into another trance and starts raving, every word that rhymes with dead. Frank watches her, completely delighted, and says she has an amazing vocabulary. At breakfast with the three of them, the doctor wants to run tests on Ada. Ada refuses and knocks a cup off the table on purpose. She wants the door open so she can go outside. The doctor says no. Ada knocks over another cup. Frank winks at her with total pride. The two of them sneak out together and head straight to the cinema. Frank tells Ada about Ronnie, how he got polio as a kid, how one leg is shorter than the other, how he wears a special shoe so he can dance. Ada asks if that's what made Frank happy about him, because she has the same condition. After the movie, they wander into a cabaret hidden in a dark alley. Ada wants to dance. Frank absolutely does not dance. He sits back and watches her on the floor, and in his mind, she's lit up by a huge spotlight. He imagines himself in a black suit, dancing right beside her. Ada, in her white dress, notices some women putting on makeup nearby. One of them does her makeup too, and she dances freely. A few men join her, but things turn ugly fast. They start touching her in ways she didn't invite. Ada screams, and Frank steps in and pulls her away. The men follow them outside and start going after Frank. He's trying to avoid a fight, but then they grab Ada like they're going to assault her. That's it for Frank's patience. He kills them all instantly. The whole thing is caught on camera, and the two of them bolt. Frank tells Ada to walk away, go back to her home, get away from him. He doesn't want to drag her into more trouble. But when he gets back to the institute to grab money and his things, Ada is still there. She hasn't moved. He points out she definitely doesn't want to get arrested alongside him, but she doesn't even know where she lives. So he takes her with him, and they run. Then Ada gets pulled toward Mary again. Her mind is trapped. She can't breathe. Mary asks, "What do you think of the name The Bride of Frankenstein?" Then she pauses and adds that it's not quite right, is it? She tells Ada to find her own name. Back in reality, Ada and Frank are on a train that screeches to a sudden stop. Police are at the front. Frank hides Ada, and a soldier walks through the car and leaves. Frank has a newspaper article about Ronnie on him. Ada starts asking which movie star she used to love before the accident, and Frank starts making things up on the spot. Then, completely out of nowhere, Ada starts singing loudly. The soldier hears her. Their cover is blown. The soldier spots Frank's face and is about to shoot, but Ada shoves him right off the moving train. The next morning, investigators show up at the scene where Frank killed those men in the alley. They know he's been spotted repeatedly at Ronnie's movies. They find a photo of the two of them, but Ada's face is blurry. Meanwhile, Frank and Ada have arrived in New York. Frank wades into a fountain and starts fishing out coins. His face is plastered on wanted posters everywhere, and the newspapers have started calling Ada the monster's bride. Ada asks Frank what her real name is. He says Ginger. She laughs. He says Penelope, and so Ada starts calling herself Penelope Frankenstein. On the investigator's side, they've reached the train tracks. The lead investigator is a man named Jake, and his secretary is a woman named Myrna. The commissioner thinks the body on the tracks has nothing to do with the Chicago case, but Myrna finds Frank's article about Ronnie at the scene and shows it to Jake. She'd already bought tickets to New York before Jake even asked. Back with Ada, she asks Frank about the soldier she pushed off the train and whether he's okay. Frank tells her, yeah, he must be fine by now. They go to another movie. Myrna and Jake are actually staking out that same cinema, but Ada, on a whim, takes Frank to a completely different one, accidentally protecting them. Inside the cinema, a man next to Ada keeps pressuring his girlfriend even as she says no. Ada slaps him and tells him, point blank, she told you no. The man jumps up screaming, monsters! Monsters! Frank grabs Ada's hand, and they run. The investigators see them flee and give chase. The police block the road, so Frank and Ada slip through a restaurant kitchen and stumble into a private party. They each grab a waiter's tray and blend in. Then Frank sees him. Ronnie. His Ronnie. Right there at the party. He walks over, calls out to him, takes off his mask, and tells him that back in 1917 in Manchester, Ronnie smiles. says he'd be happy knowing Frank was no longer alone, that he was glad to have kept him going. Then Ronnie smiles and jokes that he's sorry, but Frank is not his type. Frank's heart shatters. He flips his tray and starts performing every one of Ronnie's dance moves right there in the middle of the party, completely falling apart. Ada jumps in beside him. And then, as if possessed, because they are possessed by Mary Shelley herself, the other guests start joining in, dancing around them. Then the police storm in. Ada's eyes land on Jake. There's a strange recognition between them. A soldier lunges at Frank, and Ada grabs a gun and tells everyone to back off. She points it at Ronnie, the most important person in the room. Then she starts speaking, and it's really Mary speaking through her. She announces that the place is full of corrupt police, that the gang leader Lupino has been bribing the commissioner. She starts naming women Lupino had killed, all found dead with their tongues cut out. The dead are furious. She calls out every man in the room, exposing how they silenced those women. A soldier tries to creep up on her, and Ada shoots him dead. In the same instant, Frank brings the chandelier crashing down, grabs Ada, and they're gone. Frank tells her what just happened was incredible, but Ada is drowning in guilt, asking what she's done. Jake appears right behind them, but doesn't shoot. He just lets them run past him. After that, a massive manhunt begins, but Frank and Ada steal a car and disappear, spending their days watching movies together. Back at the Institute, the doctor finds Ada's story in the papers. Ada has accidentally started a revolution. Women everywhere are painting their faces like the bride and taking to the streets, fighting back. Lupino is losing his mind because Ada said his name at that party. He orders James and Clyde to take care of her. James says they already did. They put her in a hole and made sure she was dead. Lupino calls James a fool and shoots him on the spot. He tells Clyde to cut out her tongue. He wants it as a souvenir. On the investigator's side, Jake says the federal government wants to charge Ada with 16 murders. Myrna corrects him, 17, but Jake thinks Ada shot that soldier in self-defense. Myrna tells Jake that Ada looked at him at the party like she knew him. Jake brushes it off. But Myrna has a theory. There's a pattern connecting the murders to the cities where Ronnie's movies were filmed. That leads them to head toward Niagara Falls. Jake tells Myrna she's a very smart secretary. Myrna says that if they catch them, she wants her name on the case this time. Jake says it's not up to him. Myrna walks away frustrated. Frank and Ada are also heading to Niagara Falls. Ada starts asking Frank about how he proposed to her. He makes up a whole story: champagne, oysters, the works. He tells her she was absolutely crazy about oysters. Then a police car pulls up behind them and signals them to stop. Frank whispers to Ada to tell the officer he's sick and just be polite. The officer asks for her license. She doesn't have one. She tells him Frank is her sick uncle. He asks her name. She says, Ginger, then changes it to Penelope. The officer tells her to step out of the car and starts touching her under the pretense of a search. Mary's voice rises up. Where is she? Urging Ada to hold herself together. Ada does. But then the officer crosses a line and Frank shoots him. And Ada, she bites off his tongue. Another officer shoots at her and Frank kills him too. Frank grabs his injured hand and they flee. He tries to calm Ada down. She's already exhausted by Mary's voice constantly bleeding into her head. She asks, horrified, whether she actually bit off that man's tongue. Frank says he doesn't know. That was Mary. Ada fires shots into the air, and nearby people scatter at the sound. Then Ada says quietly, oysters are my favorite. She asks Frank whether she was really always like this. He tells her she was exactly like this. Then Jake appears behind them and calls her Ada. He tells her they're coming and offers to help her. The problem is Frank named her Penelope, and now Jake is calling her Ada. She tells Jake she doesn't know him. Myrna sneaks up and shoots Frank. Ada shoots back at Jake and they escape together in a stolen car. As they drive away, the two of them argue. The next morning, Myrna asks Jake if he loves Ada. Jake breaks down crying. He thought she was dead. On Ada's side, she confronts Frank directly. She asks if Frank is even his real name. She knows he's been lying. Back with Jake, he finally tells Myrna everything. Ada had been working as an escort, spying on wealthy clients and gang members as part of a case against Lupino. When they were close to making the arrest, the case got shut down. Ada came to Jake begging him to keep it open. He was attracted to her, he loved her, and he did nothing. He never reopened the case, never even tried. He breaks down completely and admits he was just a corrupt cop who did what he was told. But now he's going to submit his resignation. He tells Myrna she should take his place. Back with Ada and Frank, she notices he's in serious trouble. The bullet wound is bad. He can barely breathe. On top of everything, Ada has just said she's leaving. But instead of going, she puts Frank in the car and drives. Jake finds Myrna and tells her not to let them kill her. Myrna goes straight to the cinema, and a car pulls up. It's Ada and Frank. Ada brought him here to calm him down and watch a Ronnie film. She's planning to leave once he's settled. But Frank starts telling her the truth. Everything. He never knew her. They found her in a pauper's grave. She was dead. Clyde was there. He brought her back because he was dying of loneliness, him and Dr. Euphronius together. He was just like her, born from death. Myrna is right outside, listening to every word. Ada tells him that even though he never knew her, the strange thing is she feels like she's known him for a very long time. Frank tells her he doesn't want to let her go. Ada says that Penelope isn't her name anymore. Frank says they should find a new name and start over from zero. Ada says she loves the name The Bride. Frank says he loves that name too. He tells her he loves her mind. He says he'll love her for the rest of his life. He gets down on one knee and asks her to marry him. She says yes. And the moment she says yes, Clyde shoots him. The police raid the place. Ada screams. Myrna shouts at them to stop shooting. Ada grabs Frank's body and runs. A car chase rips through the police car, comes straight at her. Ada cuts the headlights and drives off the road into open fields. And there in the dark, she speaks to Mary. Mary asks who's there. Ada answers, the bride of Frankenstein. Mary says, beautiful, but not Ada, not Penelope, not even the bride of Frankenstein. Your name is the bride, nothing more. The bride drives straight to Dr. Euphronius. The nurse at the door has her face painted exactly like the bride. Myrna arrives right behind her. Ada tells the doctor to bring Frank back. She can do it, can't she? The doctor says no. He's gone. She's only recording radiation emissions now. Then Clyde appears behind Myrna. Ada turns the gun on the doctor and tells her that Frank told her everything. She's the one who did this to her, and now she has to fix it. The bride is begging, crying. The doctor tells her this is a dead-end road, that revenge won't give her what she wants. But listening to her words, hearing her pain, the doctor knows this woman truly loves Frankenstein. Outside, a police car pulls up. The doctor starts talking, slowly. She tells Ada about George, her husband. He was brilliant. They experimented on each other. It didn't work. In an instant, he was gone. And she did what she knew how to do. She brought him back. But he wasn't himself. He couldn't find his mind. In the end, she had to let him go herself. While all this is happening, the police storm the institute. Clyde opens fire on the bride, and the police join in. She fires back without stopping. Myrna rushes in and yells at everyone to stand down. They're already dead. She tells the sergeant she needs his men outside securing the perimeter. They clears the room of officers so they don't lose evidence. And when the sergeant asks who exactly he's taking orders from, Myrna pulls out her badge. New investigator. She also tells them to arrest the man running outside. Once the police clear out, Myrna steps outside and gives the doctor space. The doctor sits down in her chair and hears Mary Shelley's voice. There is never a story more beautiful than the story of the bride and her Frankenstein. And so the doctor makes her decision. She revives them both. Outside, the police take Clyde away in cuffs. Inside, both of them come back, and they hold each other's hands the whole time, never letting go. And at the very end, the women of the city finally catch Lupino. They paint his face exactly like the bride's. That's the end. Thank you for watching.